The Extra Point with Ryan Justice is sponsored by The Phone Medic. For the best in cell phone, tablet, or laptop repairs, The Phone Medic is the only choice for you. The Phone Medic also offers gaming PCs and laptops for both gamers and everyday users. Visit one of the 3 Phone Medic locations in Amarillo, Canyon, and their new location in Lubbock today. Hello, football fans! Welcome to The Extra Point with Ryan Justice. The holidays are over, and it's playoff time, baby. Welcome back to The Extra Point. Notice, maybe not have the sound on. There we go. New mic, new equipment, new look, everybody. Welcome back to The Extra Point. As I was saying, the holidays are over, which means it is playoff time in the NFL. Ladies and gentlemen, it is Super Wildcard Weekend coming up. For those that don't know, I am Ryan Justice. This is The Extra Point. Go like, share, subscribe, get the word out, everybody. Get into the comment sections. Hello, Hunter. It has been too long since we have done this, but ladies and gentlemen, the NFL is heated up, and we are down to the final 14 teams to determine who goes to the Super Bowl. Let's get right into it. We're going to hot topics right now. Hope everybody can hear me. Got the new mic set up. Little Christmas present to myself. But right now, Black Monday was in full effect, and it's gone on this entire week. We now have 7 head coach openings, and then if you want to count the news that dropped today about Nick Saban in Alabama, lots of coaches in major places going, and we might have one more. I'm sure you guys saw the rumor out there about Mike Tomlin possibly departing the Steelers, pulling the Sean Payton, and taking a year off. But Pete Carroll, out. Arthur Smith, out. Mike Vrabel, out. Ron Rivera, out. And we already knew about Brandon Staley. We already knew about Josh McDaniels. And I'm trying to think of the third one. Oh, yeah. Frank Reich in Carolina. So lots of coach firings. There's 7 openings, possibly 8 in the NFL. Lots of new coaches coming in. Maybe even 9 if the Patriots let go of Bill Belichick. But, man, this was absolutely a crazy coaching cycle. Black Monday, of course. And then if you want to talk about, we had the Bears' entire offensive staff getting fired today, and the Jaguars fired their entire defensive staff. So lots of changes coming with the coaching trees and the coaching staffs in a lot of different places. Hopefully we're going to see some help for guys like Justin Fields. For you Bears fans, we're also going to see some things like hopefully a better defense in Jacksonville. But, man, the coaching changes are aplenty in the NFL this week. Another big hot topic this week was the Saints victory formation touchdown that was scored by Jameis Winston to give Jamal Williams a touchdown. This was we're going to run a little bit of a short here. Here's the response Jameis Winston, who was in the game, had. I'm going to cue that up for you guys. Sorry about that. The response that Jameis Winston had when it came to why they scored the touchdown was absolutely hilarious. The back and forth that he had with this reporter. But we're going to show you the touchdown courtesy of the NFL, and then we're going to show you Jameis Winston's response to why they went for the touchdown. This is something crazy. You guys are going to want to see this. Hang on. One moment. All right, guys, we're gonna play this real quick. Just look at this.
Successful, and let's go watch this touchdown. Oh, and Arthur Smith's hot. That Dennis Allen scored a touchdown at the end. He is hot. He said, "What are you doing?" And he's going at Dennis Allen. I understand that. You can read his lips, and you know
Well, I apologize to DA because the play was victory. But I also explained to DA that it was a team decision. And I think when you have a team morale, and I asked the guys, I say, guys, like, what do you want to do? We know how much Jamal means to this team, and I understood from DA's perspective. So I give him that. But DA didn't condone that at all. You know, he didn't. However, we decided as a team to do it, and man, we got an interception to the 1 yard line. You know, like so if we would have scored, would it still would have been disrespectful?
Right.
You know, so
Tyron wasn't in on it, was he?
no, Tyron was not in there.
No,
like it was an offensive team discussion. However, when you return the ball to the 1 yard line, and you have that opportunity. We just had that opportunity, and we decided.
Do you think it's the kind of thing though that is forgotten fairly quickly, or you know what I mean?
I think it should be forgotten, especially when the score is already 41-17. So I don't know how much worse it can get. But I got a ton of respect for Arthur Smith and the coach that he is. I think they do some incredible things. I didn't want to disrespect him. That was not my intention. My intention was to lead the team that I've been with the entire year, and we made a collective decision that we wanted to get one of our guys who they fight with blood, sweat, and tears every game in the end zone. And I'm going to feel good about that. Yeah.
Okay, first off, like, it's crazy to think that an NFL group of NFL players just goes rogue and does what they want. To me, that kind of shows the control Dennis Allen has on this team. I'm wondering if that factored into why the Saints kind of were where they were at points this year, the very middle of the pack. Hunter Dillon, Happy New Year to you, sir. Yes, I did not give you the coronary. I was not going to do the one chip challenge again. I am retired from hot chip challenge eating contests. But as far as the victory touchdown goes, look, Arthur Smith had a lot more to be mad at than the Saints getting a touchdown and getting one of their buddies a touchdown in a blowout game. I mean, Arthur Smith should have been mad with how poorly Kyle Pitts was this year. How bad they didn't use Drake London or Bijan Robinson. How this team is very talented, is a very stacked team, and they couldn't capitalize on it. I've seen teams where the talent around a mediocre quarterback made that quarterback look way better than they should have. Look at Brian Hoyer. Look at Ryan Mallett. Hell, look at Brock Osweiler with my team, the Texans. Lots of mediocre quarterbacks that looked great because they had guys like DeAndre Hopkins. They had guys like a Lamar Miller. They had somebody like a Will Fuller who could catch a deep ball. You got that on the Falcons. And the fact that the Falcons looked as bad as they did at times during the season, that's on you, Arthur Smith. So you shouldn't be getting mad over a team running up the score on you when you couldn't stop them the whole game. As far as Jameis Winston and the touchdown goes, look, Jameis Winston is always great for a good soundbite, but I can't get on with a team just going rogue either and scoring a touchdown when you just had to kneel it out and get to the postseason, you know, or hopefully get to the postseason. I mean, I would understand if you're in such a tie-breaking scenario where points scored was actually mattered. Didn't in this case. You basically had to beat who was in front of you and hope that the Buccaneers wet themselves. So to me, that encapsulates the NFC South right now. The NFC South is a joke. From top to bottom, the Buccaneers are going to give Philadelphia fans hope on Monday night. And we'll get to that here in a little bit. But, I mean, the entire NFC South should not be taken seriously, and this was a perfect example why. Moving on, so the Jacksonville Jaguars, after the terrible towel celebration that's been going around, went, I believe, 1-5 down the stretch, and they completely collapsed at the end of the season and allowed the Houston Texans to come in, take the division, which was completely unprecedented. I didn't even think that was going to happen for the Texans to take the division. I'm surprised they even won 10 games, much less are in the playoffs right now. But the Jaguars were the favorites all year. Trevor Lawrence, everyone was saying this was going to be his breakout year. That the Jags team looked as stacked as ever. That this was going to be the year that Jacksonville could possibly get to the Super Bowl. And guess what? They couldn't do it. Doug Peterson's a coach that won a Super Bowl. I have all the faith in the world in Doug Peterson and in his offense and how he can maximize the potential of a team around him. Because if you think about it, that offense is stacked. Jacksonville doesn't have a bad defense per se. I'm not looking at some of the guys on that defense and going, he's a scrub. You know, Josh Allen's a great player. You've got somebody like Trayvon Walker, who was last year's number 1 overall pick. He kind of came along this year as well. Wasn't, you know, quite the impact player that you would think from a number 1 pick, but he did make some plays. And you've got some guys on the back end that are really good as well. And, of course, a loaded offense. Why weren't the Jags able to win this division earlier than it should have been? It shouldn't have gone down to week 18. Doug Peterson fires the entire defensive staff this week. And don't get me wrong, the defense let Jacksonville down plenty of times. But to me, the key problem is something that I'm not sure Jacksonville fans are ready to admit, and that's Trevor Lawrence ain't it. Trevor Lawrence is not the guy. Trevor Lawrence is not going to be considered an elite quarterback, especially when you compare him to somebody like CJ Stroud, who was in the discussion for MVP earlier in the season before he got hurt. I don't think he would have won it. He's run away with Rookie of the Year, which is not something Trevor Lawrence did, but everyone blamed Urban Meyer. Everyone gave him a pass because of Urban Meyer. Well, guess what? It's year 2 with Doug Peterson, and you found yourself wetting the bed in crucial situations again. You won the playoff game last year, but you won it having to come back from throwing 4 interceptions. And then you go to Kansas City and can't get it done. So I'm beginning to think, unless we see a dramatic improvement next year from Trevor Lawrence, it's going to cement that he's not the guy. I'm about 90% sure, 90% there, that Jacksonville, he's not the prince that was promised to you guys. And you got a great team around him. Travis Etienne, great. Tank Bigsby is a solid number 2 punch behind Travis Etienne. Zay Jones, Calvin Ridley, Christian Kirk. You've got all the weapons you could have for a crazy explosive offense. But if your quarterback isn't able to get it done when he needs to get it done, none of that matters. Moving on. So week 18, one of my favorite weeks in the NFL. The last week of the season is always crazy. It's always full of surprises. It's always full of twists and turns. And it's probably my second favorite week aside from week 1. But week 18 did deliver. I'm going to react to some of the crucial games from week 18. We start off Saturday with the Texans and the Colts. That was the biggest game on Saturday in prime time. And man, this was the CJ Stroud game. And this was the Nico Collins game. The Texans are banged up. If you would have looked at that injury report, there was probably at least half of the active roster on that injury report. And there were guys added after this game. The Texans have dealt with injuries all year. The Colts have been playing well, playing much better with Gardner Minshew than they would have with Anthony Richardson. If the Colts were playing with Anthony Richardson, I think we would be talking about them as a top 5 pick right now. It was almost a perfect storm for Indy, especially after everything that had happened this offseason with Jim Irsay being weird and the whole Jonathan Taylor saga. People thinking about them trying to trade up and get Bryce Young. This almost was a perfect ending for Indy. But man, dude, CJ Stroud continues to impress. And I was cautious about him in the beginning of the year, there's no doubt. There is no doubt. He is the best quarterback in that division. He's probably going to be a top 3 quarterback in the AFC, if not the best quarterback in the AFC eventually. Not this year, but I think he will get there. And it was just proven. It was just proven what the difference between having that guy at quarterback can do for you. And I'll give credit to Bobby Slowick, too, to offensive coordinator Bobby Slowick. They had a good game plan going into this because Indy doesn't have a bad defense. And Jonathan Taylor had, I want to say it was almost a career game. He almost rushed for 200 yards. He was over 200 yards total scrimmage yards. He was running all over the Texans. I thought he was going to be the sole deciding factor in the Texans not getting into the playoffs. Nico Collins. Nico Collins has had a great breakout year, 195 yards. He's had, I believe, 4 games where he had eclipsed 145 yards. And he is showing himself to be at least 1A when it comes to wide receivers on this team. But he just diced up this Colts secondary. And I'm not going to lie, I'm kind of just riding the wave right now as a Texans fan. But I'm interested in this matchup this Saturday because the Browns shellacked the Texans. A very short-handed Houston Texans this last time, but they've got their guy back. They're getting receivers back. Hopefully the defensive line is back. It's going to be an interesting game on Saturday. This one had turned a lot of heads, and we were talking about the Jaguars collapse. The Eagles collapse, I think, might have been a bigger one. They were 1-6 down the stretch. And I don't know if they're missing their play callers in Jonathan Gannon and Shane Steichen, but something is not right with Philly. And we've kind of been watching them, me and Nolan have, all year. We've noticed one thing. Philly is not dominating opponents like they used to. They just don't look like the fire-breathing dragon that they did. They were winning a lot of close games. They were winning a lot of close games against teams that shouldn't have been close with them, considering the talent on the field. And they were winning almost out of desperation, I would say. You kind of felt like things were about to catch up with the Eagles. And it did. And it did down the stretch when guys weren't as healthy, when teams were figuring out what you were doing more. Look, the Giants have been a mess all year. But the fact that they were able to do this to Philadelphia, who was playing for potentially the division, they needed Dallas to cough one up. Philly just didn't look like they were playing with anything on the line. And you let Tyrod Taylor and Tommy DeVito do what they did. Saquon Barkley do what he did. Receivers look better than they had probably all year. And you end up in the wild card and you're going to Tampa to play instead of playing in Philly, instead of making people come up there in cold-ass Philadelphia. So I'm worried if I'm an Eagles fan, because I had the Eagles in the Super Bowl this year. And that's not to say that they can't flip the switch, not to say that they can't get that playoff magic about them yet. We've seen some teams do that. Heck, we saw the Giants do that. But I don't know. I am worried about this Philadelphia team. I'm worried that Tampa, which they haven't been playing their best ball either. I mean, they 9-0 against the Panthers. Granted, 9 points is probably the only amount of points you need to beat Carolina because they can't score, and you just got to play a little bit of defense against them. But aside from 2 weeks ago, I think Baker had that one good game, but then he just, I don't know, he couldn't figure it out. So, but I think they can hang one on Philadelphia and get an upset. Everyone thinks, I think Philly's favored in this game. We'll look at the point totals here in a second. But man, if I'm a Philadelphia Eagles fan, I am concerned. I am really concerned. And it all has to go back to Nick Sirianni. I think you've got to turn you've got to turn the blame back on your head coach, because he's the one. I mean, he's the one putting it together. There's a lot of questions Nick Sirianni is going to have to answer. So we go to the big game, the last game of the year, the last Sunday night game, which was the Bills and the Dolphins. This one was for all the marbles in the AFC East. Miami had been on top seemingly all year. Buffalo was very up and down. Josh Allen was not playing well for a healthy stretch of games. He didn't play well in this game either. And Miami kind of capitalized on it, but Miami's just making too many mistakes. You would think with this offense, you would think with some of the guys that they have on defense, like Jalen Ramsey, Xavier Howard, you could tell they were missing Bradley Chubb, who's out for the year, for probably into next year as well. You could tell they were missing some guys on defense. Miami is really banged up, but all year the narrative about Miami is they couldn't beat the good teams. They only beat one, and that was Dallas, and they had the narrative that they couldn't beat the good teams either. So I guess you looked at Miami as less fraudulent, but they should have capitalized on Josh Allen playing bad. They should have capitalized on being able to get to the Bills whenever they did. And that punt return, that was a special teams failure. The punt return for the touchdown, it let the Bills escape with the division, if I'm being honest. And if I'm looking at it, I see the Bills maybe winning a playoff game and getting bounced because something's up with Josh Allen. They fired their offensive coordinator this year in Ken Dorsey, and the offense has gotten better. It's looked better, but there's still it's all or nothing with Josh Allen sometimes. And you kind of get a real 50-50 vibe with him where, okay, he's either going to throw you 4 touchdowns or he's going to throw you no touchdowns and 4 interceptions. Diggs, they've got the run game going a little bit. Stephon Diggs has done Stephon Diggs things. Gabe Davis, he's made some spectacular plays, but this is on Josh Allen. And if he doesn't kind of shape up in the playoffs, I would look at Buffalo getting bounced pretty early. No 3 up, 3 down, or buy or sell this week. So we're going to hop straight in to our wild card preview. And we begin Saturday afternoon with Cleveland 2.5-point favorites at my Houston Texans. A lot of people are kind of writing off the Texans in this game, simply because they got beat so bad. They got beat so soundly by the Browns in that last game. But I think this is going to be a game that's a lot closer than a lot of people think, because the Texans are getting healthier and Cleveland doesn't have a great offensive line. You saw Will Anderson in the Colts game basically dragging himself around. And I think even just having him on the field is going to have to make that offense account for him, which means if Jonathan Grenard is healthy, he could get to Joe Flacco on an offensive line that hasn't been great. On the other side of that, though, I am worried about this pass defense because Amari Cooper almost hung 300 yards on the Texans. And he's still playing a banged-up Steven Nelson. Derek Stingley's been better, but he's not following him. And D'Amico Ryans said that's not what they do. So I hope that they adjust to that, but if not, I would look for another big game from Amari Cooper. And if they can keep Joe Flacco upright, if they can keep Joe Flacco in the game, they have a chance. But I think the difference in this game is going to be C.J. Stroud. He's probably getting back Robert Woods. Nico Collins is still out there, and he's somebody that may have to be double teamed. And Cleveland doesn't have a bad secondary, so someone else is going to have to step up. They're going to have to get this run game going with Devin Singletary, maybe Dameon Pierce a little bit. Dalton Schultz is going to have to come in. Hopefully somebody like Brevin Jordan. Maybe we finally see John Mechie come in and do something. But if not, it's going to be Amari Cooper. It's going to be Kareem Hunt. It's going to be Joe Flacco just carving this up, and it may look like a repeat of this last game. But with that, I got to pick my Texans. They're at home. You've got C.J. Stroud back. Nico Collins is a couple games healthier. You're getting your defensive line back, which they're getting back Sheldon Rankins. You're getting back Shaq Mason on the offensive line. You're getting, Malik Collins is there. Hopefully Will Anderson and Jonathan Grenard are healthy enough to make a difference in this game. But I think the difference is going to come down to the quarterback, and C.J. Stroud is just on fire right now. The night game, the Peacock exclusive game, has Miami going to Kansas City in a game that could get down to about minus 12 after the half. It's going to be a cold one. And this is Tyreek Hill coming back to Arrowhead for the first time. They met earlier in the season, but it was in Germany, not in Arrowhead. So there's a lot of problems with both of these teams here. You've had the receiver issue with Patrick Mahomes and the rest of his receiving core all season. Miami has not been able to beat a good team all season. And there's frustration abound on both sides. I feel like Kansas City's the more put together team, though, even though Miami probably has more talent on the field at receiver and at running back. But Kansas City still has Travis Kelce. I feel like they've got a better – Andy Reid might be a little bit better play caller. And Patrick Mahomes is just so much more clutch than I think Tua is and that entire offense. Kansas City's won in some gritty games this year, but they've also lost some games on some boneheaded mistakes, and I don't think that's going to stop. But I think Kansas City's going to make less mistakes than Miami does because they usually kind of end up shooting themselves in the foot or not being able to capitalize on a mistake. So I'm looking at this as Chiefs win in Arrowhead. They get through to the divisional. They get through to the divisional round, and we'll see if those receiver problems follow them. But I don't think Tyreek Hill is going to get his revenge in this game. So we move on to what's probably going to be the most lopsided playoff game this year. Although we've had surprises before, and Pittsburgh being in the playoffs is a surprise in itself. I would have put money on this being the first season that Mike Tomlin had a losing season. With the way the Steelers were playing, with the fact that Kenny Pickett couldn't get going, you had to switch to Mitch Trubisky, you had to switch to Mason Rudolph, and the defense had been kind of carrying the offense. You fired your offensive coordinator in the middle of the year. I would have put money that the Steelers would have finished 8-9. Somehow, Mike Tomlin pulls this out of a hat and gets to 10-7. Credit him and that defense for helping them out because the offense really didn't do much. Got some out of Najee Harris. George Pickens had some games, but you're not scared of this Steelers offense. And now the defense has had its teeth taken away that TJ Watt's out. Barring a complete and total meltdown by Buffalo, who is as you see, is a 10-point favorite in this game, Buffalo's going to run away with this. And I think they're going to end up, we're going to end up seeing how far they can be carried. But this should be I don't want to say this is a bye because you never know. We've seen a 7-9 team that's made the playoffs come in and win a game with Seattle. But Buffalo is just so much more talented. And Mike Tomlin, hell of a coach. The fact that he got the Steelers to 10 wins is a miracle. But Buffalo's got so much more talent on the field than Pittsburgh does right now. And this is an easy pick. Probably my easiest pick this week is going with Buffalo at home against a very depleted Pittsburgh. Their star defensive lineman star linebacker is not going to be on the field. This could be a blowout, and this could be a big blowout. Buffalo wins big at home. We move on. Green Bay at Dallas. I'm actually going to be at this game if you guys didn't see. I will be working with Fox for this playoff game. So I will be on hand for Green Bay at Dallas. Dallas has won 16 straight in AT&T Stadium, and some of them have been very convincing wins. Green Bay has surprised me. I didn't think they would make the playoffs. I thought that the Jordan Love experiment was not going to go well. I thought that we were going to see Green Bay kind of go on a downturn, but credit Matt LaFleur, credit Jordan Love, credit those receivers. They did it, and they actually got a playoff berth out of this. Now they're up against Dallas, who, again, like the Miami Dolphins, have not been able to beat a good team this season. They have I believe they're winless against teams over 500. I'll have to go back. No, I'll take a look. They got the one win over with, I believe it was Minnesota. But I'm interested in this game. Dallas is 7.5-point favorites at home, but they're playing against a really good Packers team. Or a scrappy Packers team. This team's not going to give up. And Dallas has some pieces that are missing. No Gilmore, no Diggs. So I'm wondering if Green Bay's not going to take some shots. I know you got Bland back there who has had several spectacular pick sixes this year, but I would look for Green Bay to run this a lot and then take some shots with play action. Jordan Love, his first taste of playoff football. This is going to be a game that I think is going to be closer than a lot of people think. And I wouldn't be surprised if Green Bay pulled it out. But the Cowboys are a different animal at home. AT&T Stadium is going to be rocking. They're going to have all those white towels waving. Cowboys Nation is going to be there in full-throated strength, I guess, if that's how you want to put it. So I'm going with the Cowboys on this one. If we want to throw in a little extra stat, they're 2-0 when I've been there, and they've been dominant victories. So Cowboys fans, there's a little bit of solace if you're nervous. That when the Texans fan shows up, they win. This game is my game of the week, though. This is the game I am probably the most interested in. LA going to Detroit, who is hosting a playoff game for the first time in 30 years. Detroit did exactly what I said they were going to do this season. Run away with the North. They never lost first place. This is a very explosive and dangerous team. Jahmyr Gibbs is an absolute weapon. Amon-Ra St. Brown, I think, is an underrated receiver in a lot of cases. I know he gets a lot of his own flowers, but he's a very, this offense is really good. Jared Goff, for all the people who wrote him off when he came out of Los Angeles, for all the people that said they were sending him to Detroit, for lack of a better word, sending him to Detroit for his career to die, man, he is proving a lot of people wrong. I have questions about Detroit's defense outside of Aiden Hutchinson, who has played his tail off this year. But I think that Detroit, if they can make this a shootout, they're good enough to make the Super Bowl. I will say they are good enough to make a run at this, at least to the NFC Championship, because they're the number 2 seed. And, if somebody like Green Bay upsets Dallas, well, the Lions have already beaten Green Bay this year. And I think they can make I think they would have an easy path if they're not playing, because I don't see a whole lot of the NFC wild cards that scare me. So if one of them gets an upset, man, you might be looking at bringing a Super Bowl back to Detroit, depending on who they match up with in the AFC. But I'm picking the Lions in this one. The Rams have been good. They have been a scrappy team. The Rams have been better than I thought they would be all year. Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua are an absolute lethal combination when it comes to the passing game. They've helped out Matt Stafford so much, and the defense has gotten a lot better. They have a potential defensive rookie of the year. They also have a guy that is very much in the running for offensive rookie of the year in Puka Nacua. This could be a shootout, if I'm being honest. This could be an absolute shootout between these two teams on Sunday night. But I am going with Detroit here. I feel like they just got all the momentum on their side. We're going to move on to our next game. Philadelphia, the Monday night game. They go to Tampa. Philly's 3-point favorites. And like I said in the beginning, Philly backed into the playoffs, and they could potentially be upset in this game if they're not careful. Hang on a second, my dog's scratching out the window. Excuse me. But Philly and Tampa, I want to say it's the lesser of the playoff teams. I'm not scared of Tampa, even though Baker's been playing really well, playing enough for him to probably get the starting role again next year. Mike Evans, again, another lights out year for him. You've got guys like Cameron Otten. Of course, you got Chris Godwin, all the usual suspects with Tampa Bay. And the defense has been playing well too, but it seems like they get bogged down. It seems like sometimes they get in their own way. Baker has a Baker game sometimes where he's just cooking up a ton of turnovers. But Philly with this backslide is interesting because I'm not sure that they have enough steam to go into Tampa and just prove a lot of people wrong. I'm picking the Eagles, cautiously picking the Eagles, because I do feel like they can flip the switch. If they're going to flip the switch, it's going to be in this game. I'm not expecting a blowout, but I'm hoping for a much better Philly team. If anything, this could be a game where they shake the cobwebs out and move on. But I do have the Eagles going into the divisional round over Tampa Bay. With that, we go to the extra picks. These are kind of my personal extra picks. Things that I'm not saying are going to happen, but or you should put money on, but these are just my opinions. If you want to put money on them and I win you a little bit of money, kick a little my way. But congratulations. Right now, CJ Stroud, over 300 yards. His average is pretty good above 250. But I think with CJ being out there, Nico Collins being out there, Robert Woods, Dalton Schultz, guys like Devin Singletary, we're going to see CJ go for 300. And even against a good Browns secondary, I honestly would put a bet on CJ going over 300 yards. Like I said, I think this is going to be a lot closer game than it was last time. But I think CJ is going to end up with a really good game against the Browns team. Hopefully a win for us Texans fans. Going to Dallas, Micah Parsons. I'm going to give him 2+ sacks. That's always a good one to bet on because Micah Parsons is I think it's a solid pick for Defensive Player of the Year. But I'm not overly scared of this Packers offensive line. Jordan Love can move a little bit, but Parsons is just so big and so fast. And I think him getting 2+ sacks is going to really help Dallas get that victory. The last one of the night, Puka Nacua, 2 touchdowns. He has been absolutely on fire. I think a lot of teams are going to have to choose between him and Cooper Kupp. That's going to allow Matt Stafford to cook. That's going to allow Puka Nacua to go out and do his thing, and probably Cooper Kupp to do his thing. I imagine you're going to see 2 touchdowns from Puka Nacua. Maybe even throw a little money on a Cooper Kupp touchdown as well. It should be a good day for Matt Stafford, but I think the Lions win in a shootout on that one. But that's my game of the week, so go look at that one. That does it for this week, guys. A little bit of a shortened version of the Extra Point. We've got a lot working on. I got to get ready to travel to Dallas tomorrow because it's going to be a long 3-day weekend getting ready for this playoff game, guys. Enjoy Super Wild Card Weekend. Have fun. Drink, be merry. Bet on the games if you want to. Watch football. But it's playoff time, baby. Hopefully your team is in it and they move through. If not, well, guys, the offseason is always fun too. But until then, my name is Ryan Justice. We're going to have co-hosts next week. But goodbye. Good night.